All right, folks, here we go with the notes for Chapter 1, Production in Modern Radio. Going to take a look at things from a kind of macro point of view and look at some of the things that we'll be talking about throughout the course, both in this semester and in the next. By way of introduction, radio revenue was slowly decreasing, although it held steady right up until the COVID-19 pandemic. Projections show potential revenue recovery, while digital is overall increasing, albeit slowly. And there's a graph in your notes that shows the revenues that have happened over the past 5 years and projected revenues for 2021 and 2022. Some statistics for you as of April of 2021. 63% of Americans listen to AM/FM radio every day. We're talking about American adults here. And 89% of American adults listen every week. So AM/FM radio still gets people's attention. It accounts for 41% of 18 plus listening time, more than any other audio source. Now, other audio sources combined are more popular than radio, but radio as a separate entity, as opposed to other separate entities, is still the most popular. 64% of Americans are listening to on-air advertisements when they're listening to AM/FM radio, which may shock some of us, especially those of us that once we hear a commercial, we can't wait to hit that scan or seek button. We pay attention to them. We talk about commercials that are prominent and catch our attention. So they're effective on a certain level. And a little less than half find that AM/FM radio is effective for learning about local businesses. So AM/FM radio, a great way to learn about your community, to learn about products and services that are being offered nearby. Spot advertising, by definition, are commercials placed by an advertiser at stations of the advertiser's choosing. So an advertiser agrees to go into a contract with the radio station and present their message to the audience of the station, and that's what they're paying the station for. Digital radio signals and internet sources are taking share away from traditional terrestrial radio, but it's also providing new opportunities. Just like anything else that has happened, when something new comes along, the old thing has to adapt or embrace some of the new things that are coming along. Radio has been slow to embrace some of the technological changes, especially in terms of new media, but they have been doing so over the past 5-10 years, and they're becoming stronger and stronger as they do so. Now, highly specific markets can be exceptionally profitable. What we're talking about here with markets in this case is we're talking about certain segments of the population. What such markets lack in raw numbers, the numbers might be small, but they make up by appealing to advertisers who desire a focused demographic with predictable buying habits. When you have a lot of people that are like-minded or have a certain temperament that they're kind of in agreement with, there tends to be certain characteristics about that audience, and an advertiser can reach out to that particular audience, meet them with a message from their point of view that appeals to their beliefs, attitudes, values, and it can be rather effective for that advertiser. One of the ways that they determine what those beliefs, attitudes, values are is by looking at algorithms. Algorithm-based radio is a service that uses a sample of listener preferences to predict preference in music and, of course, in purchases as well. So as data are collected about listeners to stations and what makes up those audiences, why they keep tuning in, that's something that radio stations pay attention to. They present that data to advertisers, and advertisers from there may make decisions on whether or not to purchase advertising time with that station. The durability of radio. Many people think radio is dead. Not yet. Radio is still one of the few media that can be accessed reliably and safely in the car. Yes, there is smartphone technology. A lot of cars have smart-enabled devices that can tap into Wi-Fi. Sometimes there's a tablet built into the car itself. But it relies on that internet connection. And as vast as internet capability is these days, it's still not with the penetration that radio has. All you require with a radio is an antenna, turn your radio on, and you're able to find content. Radio is the constant companion of multitaskers. A lot of workplaces will have radio stations on in the office or in the shop where the workers are listening in. A lot of businesses that you walk into for shopping may have a radio station playing in the showroom. So it is something that maybe we don't pay a lot of attention to while it's on, other than it's kind of a background for us. And, every once in a while we catch a song that we like, or we catch an idea or a thought that's being presented by somebody. Radio also retains a strong hold on what's called business-to-business advertising, that B2B segment. Essentially, this is one firm selling to other firms that use a particular product. Now, because radio reaches a high proportion of business owners and executives, especially during what we call drive time, those commuting hours when you're heading to work in the morning, coming home in the afternoon, many times the executives will turn the radio on for catching up on the news of the day, or just turning on some music to relax on their ride home, or figuring out what the traffic situation is like, whatever the case may be. These are periods when people they're listening, they're tuned in, they're in the car. It's a captive audience of sorts, and it's a great medium for B2B. Let's talk about the sound of the station. What do we mean by a station's sound? Basically, a station's sound is created by using various sources of sound to create a specific result. So we're talking about a targeted product that the station is trying to create that's going to appeal to specific listeners. It's how these sources blend that make one station different from other stations that compete for listeners' attention. And this is true even of stations that have a similar format to each other. For example, in Raleigh, there's 2 country music stations that play, by and large, the same type and style of country music. But there are differences between the 2 stations in how they present that music, the order of which they play certain songs, when they break in for the announcer to come on, or the commercials they play, how many commercials they play, the way that they brand themselves as a station, and the way they present that material to you on the air. All of that is what creates a station's sound. And the sound of the station is going to appeal to different people in different ways. Some of those elements that may play a part in how a station sounds to a listener. Well, there's the type of music that's programmed. Is it old music, new music? Is it fast music? Is it slow music? Is it loud? Is it soft? Whatever the case may be. The style and the pace of the vocal delivery used by the station's announcers, also going to be an element of a station's sound. The techniques used in the production of commercials, including the sound effects that are being used. How do those things present themselves on the air? Are they real high energy? A lot of music and sound effects in the background? Or is it just a dry voiceover, basically just giving you the facts of what's being talked about? And there's all sorts of other things that go into a station's sound as well. And we're going to talk about all of these things as we go through the course this year. In terms of formats in and of themselves, basically, the reason why formats exist is because stations are trying to make money. And they're trying to make money by selling you, the listener. They're targeting audiences so that advertisers will see that a station has a particular audience, and in hopes that the advertiser will buy time on the station's airwaves to reach you, the listener. So a commercial radio station's programming goal is to put something on the air that will attract audiences, which then can be sold to advertisers. So the advertiser has to look at the audience that is being captured by a station, and there has to be an appeal there that has to be attractive for the advertiser to reach. Now, it's a little different with public radio stations. They don't sell advertising, but businesses do, quote unquote, buy airtime. It's not really buying airtime. They're donating to the station in exchange for an underwriting announcement. And that's one way that public radio stations make money. They also make money by individual subscribers, listener donations. So in that sort of way, it's a little different in terms of how a public radio station is going to try to put its format and its station sound together. So reaching a specific audience. Radio has developed into a medium that focuses on smaller groups, these so-called target audiences. And we call these target audiences demographics. It's the statistical characteristics of a certain segment of the human population. Many times we talk about demographics in terms of age, in terms of gender, and in terms of race or cultural background. So we're trying to reach those certain segments of the audience in a broader sort of way. And there's more ways that we can segment an audience, but those are the big major groups that we're dealing with when we're talking about demographics anyway. So a format is the arrangement of these program elements, whether it's musical recordings, talk is a format as well. And all these things are being put together into a sequence that will attract and hold the audience segment that a station is seeking to attract. Now, sometimes a station's trying to go for as many earlobes as they possibly can. So full service stations, a good example of this, where they're trying to provide information to everybody within a certain geographic area. There's also just using popularity as a draw. So things like top 40, most popular songs, contemporary hit radio, those tend to attract a lot of listeners from all walks of life. But some formats appeal to particular tastes and interests, and that narrows the number of listeners that a station reaches, but they do that in hopes that listeners become more loyal, and because those listeners tend to be of a certain type of ilk, a certain type of demographic, it may be more attractive to an advertiser. So these stations that use formats may be trying to reach people with very specific musical tastes, or reach people that are seeking a certain type of information. Stations do wind up switching formats pretty frequently, and there's a few reasons that this may happen. Switching usually occurs because of a decision to go after a more profitable demographic segment. Sometimes it's because the taste of an audience in the area shifts. Certain artists may go in and out of style. Sometimes a new style of music comes on the scene that's a little more popular, or different things happen. Whatever the flavor is of the people in the area, and that flavor can change from time to time. And sometimes there's just too much competition in a particular format, so a station may try to find an underserved audience and go after that audience to get a unique set of earlobes to attract advertisers that are looking for that unique audience. So this is a good point for us to take a break. We'll finish up the chapter in part B of chapter 1, the next video. Hope to see you over there.